Number 10. Reminders. Who is the most imitated character in the Monsters Inc. franchise? If you said Sully or Mike, you are vastly misinformed because it is obviously Roz, voiced by Bob Peterson, the slow-moving silent hero of the film who puts the fear of God into Mike when he doesn't remember to file his paperwork on time. I think we can all relate to Mike in that moment, but even more so when someone discovered these Easter eggs. In Mike's locker, there's not only one note, but several notes reminding Mike to file his paperwork before he leaves. Who hasn't set a dozen alarms, a dozen reminders for themselves to do the thing they always forget to do, and still manage to forget to do it? I love how subtle this is and makes Mike even more of a relatable character, and it's kind of terrifying how much I relate to this moment, if I'm being honest.
Coming in at number 9, where does the poop go? If we really think about the world of WALL-E, it's actually pretty gross. Yes, humans don't have to work for a living and they can laze around all day, which to some sounds great, but really, actually, it's kind of super gross. We see humans falling out of their chairs and unable to stand up at one point in the movie, which means getting up to go to the toilet is probably off the cards. The implication here is that humans simply just go in their chairs. So basically in the world of WALL-E, people likely stink. 1, they don't wash, but 2, they regularly soil themselves. Honestly, weeing and pooping in their chairs, I'm sure the chairs kind of self-clean, but like seriously, is this what we have to look forward to with humanity? Blech. Okay, worse still, the humans in WALL-E are pretty fat and unable to do physical activities, so I guess that begs the question, where do babies come from at number 8? And no, obviously you don't want to hear the theory. You don't. You just don't. You don't, but you do because you're still here. Good. So a lot of people have been wondering how the humans of Axiom reproduce. While I'm sure that human population is reasonably tightly controlled, they are still reproducing, keeping the bloodline alive. There was one pretty intense but pretty credible theory posted by Vin Sneasel on Reddit, and I also just want to take a moment to say, Vin Sneasel, great name. They began their theory by saying, the floating chairs people ride around in take care of all of their bodily functions. This includes masturbation. Genetic material is stored and eventually transported to the nursery on the lower decks. Okay, let's just stop here for a second. So the machines help people masturbate. That is one sexy chair, and I don't feel good about it. Alright. Then, the machines store the sperm. Now the implication here is that the robots then use the bodily matter to impregnate female humans at controlled rates. So they're kinda, I don't know, sex machines. Literally sex machines. Ah! My favourite comment response to this is from Chief Engineer Starfleet, who said, holy dystopia, Batman. Honestly, nail on the head. Coming in at number 7, we have WALL-E as fat shaming. Some angry people of the internet are convinced that WALL-E is the work of fat shamers. The universe of WALL-E presents humans as lazy gluttons who don't work and depicts these beings as fat. Now, body positivity associations are upset with this as they think it sends out the wrong message about people who are overweight, perpetuating the stereotype that larger people are lazy. Some compare the movie to being comfortable with the body perfect propaganda spread by Nazi Germany. Has Disney Pixar gone too far? You tell me. Coming in at number 6, Autopilot is HAL 9000. 2001 A Space Odyssey is my favourite film of all time, but I have to admit that HAL 9000 is a bad robot. It's one of the scariest villains I've ever seen. In the Stanley Kubrick movie, HAL tries to kill the pilots of the ship when he finds out that he thinks they're plotting to reboot him. HAL is basically a bad robot. Here's how. Now have a look at the bad robot from WALL-E, Auto. Is Auto HAL, or are they related? Auto doesn't show any emotions, but is seemingly pretty ruthless. If he is related to the HAL bot, well, serious murderous trouble could be afoot for humanity. Coming in at number 5, we have the WALL-E cannibals. Are the people from Axiom eating and drinking one another? Like, actually, maybe. This scary theory was shared by Matt Pratt of the Film Theorist on YouTube, and basically they say that there is clearly not enough food and resources for the people of the Axiom ship. He says, how could people be that fat? They pose that when a human dies, they're actually turned into food. The theory goes that in the movie we see trash from Axiom being turbo ejected into space, but in the scenes that we're shown there aren't actually any human bodies in the mix. According to the Film Theorist, the way humans are being nourished 700 years after leaving Earth is by making use of body meat. It seems that Auto, with the directive of A113, is behind it all. He wouldn't let something like secret cannibalism worry marry him, and he doesn't want Axiom to return to Earth for resources, so he strips dead humans of their meat, adds flavour, and calls it cupcake in a cup. The people of Axiom are none the wiser. Eating human meat would be pretty fatty too, which may be why the humans on the ship are so blubbery. Doesn't spell balanced diet. Coming into number 4, we have Wally as a stalker. Some people of the internet are convinced that the benevolent Wally is actually a psycho in love. He becomes infatuated with Eve and follows her around incessantly. He even builds a statue of her. He then creepily keeps trying to hold her hand. Like, if these were humans and not robots, I mean, wouldn't we be finding Wally a little bit of a creep? I think we might. Stop trying to hold my hand. Coming in at number 3, worse than a psycho stalker, is Wally a killer? I can't believe that cute sweet Wally can kill, but that hasn't stopped the people of Reddit coming at him with pitchforks. A number of fans out there have pointed out that it is almost impossible for the Earth to have become overrun by trash by accident. Some fans say that the Wally unit went rogue and destroyed all of the other Wally units over a 700-year murder spree. That's why there's so much waste and there's only one robot around, and we see him capitalizing on parts of his fellow units at the beginning of the movie. Basically, he collects the body parts of his dead friends to ensure his own survival. Wally can't be a murderer, can he? Coming in at number 2, we have the sentient robots, the AI takeover. Robots don't have feelings, they're machines. Machines programmed by humans to do what they're told. A robot able to act extraneous to human intention is pretty scary. In Wall-E, this is posed as a malfunction, but if all robots found sentience, wouldn't that be, you know, kind of terrifying? Wall-E is posed as a good robot, but what if a bad robot became self-aware? Then we'd literally all be screwed, seeing as this would basically be the beginning of the AI takeover, right? Finally, coming into number 1, we have the humans all fail. Not such a happy ending for Wall-E after all. There is a massive overriding theory out there called the Pixar theory. Now, this suggests that all Pixar movies take place in the same universe along a spread timeline. It starts and ends with a time loop in Brave and Monsters Inc. Anyway, the Pixar theory suggests that prior to Wall-E, just before the Cars universe, animals rose up against humans to stop pollution, but machines stepped in and saved humanity with the proviso that they'd be ejected from Earth into a spaceship called Axiom, leaving machines to run the planet. Enter cars. The problem is that the Earth burns too much fuel and becomes a wasteland unfit to sustain life. Cars eventually die out because there's no more oil and Earth is left as a huge junkyard. Enter Wall-E. Wall-E ends with humans coming back to salvage Earth, but famously, the captain wants to grow a pizza plant, exposing humans as pretty naive. The theory goes that eventually humans fail and die out, and animals mutate and rise once more, creating the so-called monsters we see in Monsters University, where monsters are taught that humans were toxic. Eventually, the monsters realize that they need to bring humans back to provide them with sources of energy, so they open doors to time travel to different human generations. Right, anyone else exhausted? I have to say though, pizza plants, great idea. We should get on that.
Number 10, West Cutting. It's almost as if they wanted fans of the film to like hunt them down and like host a barbecue outside in the parking lot. In both Toy Story 2 and 3, their old address of 1001 West Cutting is tucked away where you'd least expect it. In Toy Story 2, there's an ad for Al's Toy Barn and the address is 1001 West Cutting, and then in Toy Story 3, there was a sign above Andy's door that says the same thing. We get it! We know where you live now, except they have since moved to Emeryville, and we know that because they have a reference to that in other films like Cars. I wonder if the studio has ever worried about people figuring this out and storming the castle to show their love. I'm pretty sure they'd welcome it. They'd be like, yeah, cool, you found us. Here's the golden ticket. We're gonna put you in the next film. That'd be cute. Number 9, 2319! We've got a 2319! This next one is so subtle, but when someone finally realized it, their TikTok post about it blew up. Whenever a Monsters Inc. fan hears the words 2319, your reactionary response might be to like duck and cover, or check for a white sock on the back of your shirt. Poor George has the worst time out of anybody in this movie for that very reason. But did you know that 2319 has a very clever meaning? TikTok user I Am Fire made the realization that the reason it's 2319 is because W is the 23rd letter of the alphabet and the 19th letter is S. WS, which translates to white sock. Very, very clever. You got us. Number 8, Finding Nemo. Another incredibly popular Pixar film was of course Finding Nemo. The story of a father and his friend Dory trying to track down his son Nemo across the great wide ocean. But interestingly enough, Finding Nemo was released in 2003 while Monsters Inc. was released in 2001. But if you look carefully in the Monsters Inc. film, you will spot the very first version of Finding Nemo in a kind of like Where's Waldo situation. Boo hands a toy version of Marlin to Sully close to the end of the movie when he's trying to leave. It's about 1 hour, 18 and 43 seconds in to be exact. So yes, I totally double checked this. I had Disney Plus again in the corner because of course. A clownfish also appears at the sushi restaurant on a painting behind the octopus chef while he's doing his thing. So yeah, that's right. They set up Easter eggs for their next project before anyone would even pick up on the details because they planned so far ahead. Mad respect, man. Mad respect. Number 7, Toys in the Story. They've predicted the future, but of course Pixar continues to celebrate the past and where they came from. The Toy Story franchise is arguably one of their strongest series of films they've ever made. So any opportunity they have to add in a secret reference here and there, they are going to take it. If you are a Toy Story fan, you may have spotted Andy's wallpaper as one of the screens Randall camouflages behind before he begins his work. Or at the end, you might have spotted Boo picking up our favorite cowgirl, Jessie, and handing her to Sully right before she hands the Marlin over. But that is not all, because number 6, Sid's room. Moving on to number 6, we have a secret reference to Sid in Toy Story. Speaking of Toy Story references, this next one blows my mind! At 15 minutes 54 seconds in, make sure to pause, like really quickly. I had to do it as soon as I could. You know the scene where the one monster gets scared by one of the kids he visits? Well, guess who that kid was? Sid. The evidence at the time mentioned, you can see a Paul Bunyan poster on the wall behind the door, which is exactly the same poster that Sid had in his room in Toy Story. Coincidence? I think not. Pixar does everything for a reason. Of course they would make that reference because honestly, what kid would be scary enough to scare a scare monster? Answer: Sid. Number 5, When Mike Met Sully. When Harry Met Sally is one of my favorite films. I love it so much. I watch it every year around New Year's because, you know, that last scene. Billy Crystal, Meg Ryan, Carrie Fisher, witty dialogue, a fantastic cafe scene, all wrapped up in an incredible love story. Like what more could you want? Famous comedian Billy Crystal is the voice behind Mike Wazowski, and the Pixar animators were obviously a huge fan of his work, and especially this movie since they made a reference to it in the film. Billy does a hilarious segment in When Harry Met Sally called The White Man's Overbite, which makes its appearance in the film. After Mike does his first comedy routine at the end of the film, he comes out and does a little dance, all while doing The White Man's Overbite. So classic little nod there. Number 4, the Pixar staff. It would be pretty cool to see your name in the credits of a Pixar movie, but what about in the actual film? When Pixar is looking to fill in some blank spots, they don't just pick something random. If there is a way to celebrate their team and company, they take it. In the scare hall in the film, there's a massive chart that shows the arrangement of the best scares in the biz. Well, it turns out that most of those names are actual employees at Pixar. Joe Rampt and Bud Lucky were story artists, Jonas Rivera worked in the art department, Bob Peterson voiced Roz and worked on the story, Bob Pauls was the production designer, and Daniel Gerson, of course, wrote the screenplay. So some cute little nods there. Considering how vast and intricate the world of Pixar has become, I think it's time they had like their own theme park. Like, I know there's stuff at Disneyland, but they need their own. Like, they need their own country of just Pixar life. The last 3 of the list. Number 3, the trailer park. At the end of the film, while Sully, Boo, Mike, and Randall are traversing across the closet door galaxy, we come across this very familiar trailer. Have you figured out where you've seen it before? Well, if you're a massive fan of A Bug's Life, then it will be easy to spot. This rundown trailer makes an even further rusted appearance in A Bug's Life. But that's not all. Look beside it. Looks like we have figured out who might be the pizza truck driver from Toy Story, because parked right beside it is You guessed it, the Toy Story pizza truck. The attention to detail is astounding. Number 2, Hidden City Cafe. For viewers watching Monsters Inc. for the first time or second time, your attention will probably be on the main characters, as they should be. But for Pixar animators, there are 100 details that mean 10 times more to them than we will ever realize. Hidden City Cafe was the birthplace of many of Pixar's most popular films like A Bug's Life, Finding Nemo, WALL-E, and of course Monsters Inc. Andrew Stanton, John Lasseter, Pete Docter, and Joe Ranft, RIP, used to go there for lunch to gather and outline ideas for the next big thing. The cafe even collected Pixar memorabilia and decorated their space with it. It used to be right around the corner from the original Pixar headquarters, but sadly the cafe has since closed. But Pixar found a way to honor this place forever by featuring it in their films. Sometimes it's written on a small license plate, but the largest reference is in Monsters Inc. when Sully and Mike walk past it. There's a little monster sweeping up after some customers. These films are literally dripping with nostalgia, and the love that goes into them is endless. And last but not least, the real name. There is a huge reason as to why this is number 1. I found this out while researching this list, shared it with our team, and that blew all their minds. Didn't it ever bother you that we never found out Boo's real name? Well, joke's on you because it's in there. It just turns out Boo was the only one who knew it. In the scene where Boo is drawing, there's a name written on one of the papers and it says Mary. Boo's name is Mary Gibbs. It was first revealed more obviously in a book that was based on the film that her real name is Mary Gibbs. But the shock doesn't end there. Mary Gibbs is the actual name of the voice actress who played her in the film. So just like, circle of life. So perfect. I love that.
Alright, coming in at number 10, WALL-E is Satan. No, I refuse to believe it. Redditor Vexless presents a very good argument. It all hinges on interpreting the movie through the lenses of Genesis and the Bible. In this scenario, WALL-E is seen as the serpent in the Garden of Eden. So basically, the paradise in which mankind live in the garden in the Bible could be applied to the so-called paradise of the Axiom ship. Humans want for nothing. They just eat and drink and sit and entertain themselves all day without concerns for work or politics or money. Then WALL-E comes aboard with temptation, a seedling from planet Earth. Now this could be seen as the apple that the serpent offers Eve. Yes, Eve, the name of the robot that WALL-E gives the seedling to. It's all falling into place. The chain of events tempts humans away from their paradise and back to Earth, where they have to labor and toil and things just aren't so great. Genesis says, by the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it was where you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you will return. Ominous.
Number 9, AI spiders. Animation in itself is like a painstaking process. Having to draw intricate lines, layers of animation with subtle changes is a tedious process. Pixar didn't want to add any more stress to the team by having to create intricate little cobwebs in the corners of one of their scenes. But what they did to solve the problem is kind of terrifying. Technical director Hoseok Chang created AI spiders that were designed to weave the webs just like real spiders. All the animators had to do was tell the spiders where they wanted the webs to be, and off they'd scatter. Without the spiders, it would have taken animators several months to create the webs because they'd have to do one strand at a time. So whenever you watch the film, keep an eye out for cobwebs and remember that they were created by real computer spiders. Does that make it kind of terrifying? Yes. Incredible? Absolutely. Number 8, the new Buzz. The amount of thought that goes into every Pixar film is one of the biggest reasons as to why the Toy Story series is just that good. They don't miss a thing. When Woody is first introduced to Buzz in the first movie, by way of the angle we know that Woody isn't exactly buzzed to see a new toy join the group. After all, that is the whole point of the first movie. So Pixar knew this shot would be important later when they introduced Buzz to a newer version of his toy self. Buzz then goes on to personify the internal battle of what we all endure within ourselves, against the person we want to be and the person we are. Can we be better? Or is the battle simply about realizing that we, with our peeling labels and scuffed plastic armor, have always been enough? Number 7, Clue. This next one is scary brilliant. This is honestly going to change the way I watch Pixar films going forward. I've never seen this one, so this one was so fun to hear about. Seriously, like I was sitting in my chair and guffawed when I saw this. During this scene, in Toy Story 2, when Ham is laying out the mission for tracking down Woody, he is standing on one of the best Easter eggs ever. Of course, Ham uses the board game Clue to discuss a detective mission that will put these toys to the test. Imagine being in the writer's room for that. They must have had an entire team dedicated to coming up with iconic Easter eggs. I'm speechless. This is perfect. If you're curious and you have Disney Plus or you have the movie, the timestamp is 18 minutes and 31 seconds and you'll see it. Brilliant. Number 6, what happened to Sid? For anyone who was around when the first Toy Story came out, Toy Story 3 was an emotional journey, to say the least. It was supposed to be the last film, and believe me when I say there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. And then of course they made a 4th movie, so it was a little like anticlimactic. Kind of. But I'm sure I wasn't the only one who was wondering what happened to Sid. Well, when the toys were accidentally tossed into the trash pile, Sid nearly becomes the terrifying antagonist again. He is indeed the garbage man! You can tell due to the nostalgic skull t-shirt he wore in the first film, he's wearing it again while he's like dancing out to beats while he's doing his job, having a great time. I'm glad he found success. Good for you, Sid, doing some good for your community. But looks like he just can't help nearly ruining the lives of these toys. Glad he never got away with it though. Number 5, Foreboding Future. Another really popular film in the Pixar realm is WALL-E, about a robot left behind after we humans destroyed the world. It's also a really cute love story and it makes my heart go, Despite WALL-E being adorable, it also depicts a terrifying image of our future. This next Easter egg hints at a darker future for our lovable Toy Story world. The batteries that fuel our beloved Buzz Lightyear are the same brand, the By and Large Corporation, which is the same company that created WALL-E. BNL created WALL-E to clean up planet Earth, and they also created the same batteries that fuel Buzz. It's a terrifying thought that among the trash WALL-E cleans up is one of our beloved toys. Forever without a home. Number 4, so many Andys. I honestly didn't think this one was true until I went back and watched it, and yeah, it's pretty terrifying. When the kids are arriving for Andy's birthday in the first movie, about 10 minutes in, you can't tell which one's Andy because they're all Andy. Every single one of them is Andy except for the one kid by the staircase in the blue hat. The rest of the kids are all like carbon copies of Andy. Short buzz cut hair, round-headed ball caps. Andy is the one with the Woody hat. But I guess in an effort to save some time, they decided to press copy paste and save time on editing. Is this some kind of nod to the fact that some kids just look the same when they are that age, or was it just a way to save time? Don't believe me? Time for a rewatch and check the scene at 10 minutes in. Number 3, Always Alive. The reason I think Toy Story is so successful is that as kids, toys are some of our best friends and we give them life. Whether during an hour playing Barbie or in 10 minutes before bedtime, they were alive to us. In the Toy Story films, the toys are sentient beings, meaning that while we look away, they move, feel, think just like we do. But when we play with them, they're just that, toys. That was the kind of rule the film established. But during the film, viewers notice a subtle breach in Woody. In one scene while Andy's playing with Woody, there are unexplained adjustments in his facial expressions, and we aren't sure why, which viewers found a little disturbing. Number 2, The Shining. One of the studio's core directors is Lee Unkrich, who has been involved with many of Pixar's heavy hitters including Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, and Toy Story. He also happens to be a massive fan of The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick. He's even made a website dedicated to it, so it should be no surprise that he added in a few Easter eggs to pay respect to his favorite film. The most famous Easter egg is the carpet in Sid's house, which mirrors the carpet featured in the hallway of the film. I just watched The Shining for the first time this past winter, okay? There's lots of movies to catch up on. And I was extremely creeped out by Danny's imaginary friend, Mr. Tony. Well, Lee finally brought Mr. Tony to life, sort of, by making the janitor at Sunnyside Daycare Mr. Tony. And last but not least, if you are still with us guys, make sure to give us a like, comment, and subscribe and let us know what you think so far and drop in any hints of what you've seen in the past watching Toy Story. Let us know. Number 1, Lost Story. Did you know Toy Story 2 almost didn't happen because it got deleted? About a year before the final release of the film, they were looking back at the file directory, saw 40 files one second and then 4 the next. All hearts stopped in the office that day as 90% of their work was deleted and they didn't have a backup at the studio. Luckily, one of their employees was working from home after they had just given birth, so she had copies at home of the film so she could work. This blockbusting mistake was a result of a faulty code which they referenced in the film itself. RMRF was the code that caused the mass destruction of Toy Story 2, and they set it as the license plate on the car that takes away Bo Peep in Toy Story 4. So that was kind of confusing, but you get what I mean.